Hey everyone, welcome back to Ride the Stream. We're here talking about season one of Lost, and I'm Travis, fiction and entertainment writer, and I am joined by one of my favorite people, dear friend Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm a little semi-devastated after this episode, but we'll get into that. Today, in Baltimore, my wife and kids are off from school today because of ice. So schools were closed. Um, and yeah, so it's been a pretty dreary, chill day today.
Well, here in Glendale, Arizona, you probably don't want to know our weather.
Oh no, hey,
As you
I'll
can
I'll
probably
bask in your
tell,
glory.
as you can tell, I'm getting lots of sunlight through the window because it's that time of year. And even though we have an Meyer lemon citrus tree right out the window, I've also got like decals on the windows, so I'm between the sunlight peeking through the branches and the decals on the window, so that way the birds don't hit the window. Um, yeah, it's kind of bright here, and we are at 65 already.
Uh, Dreaming of spring weather.
I know
I,
it.
I
I
I
know it.
will live vicariously through your weather system. Um,
For
yeah,
for for a while until we hit, into the hundreds and
triple
be
digits.
like,
Yeah,
then you're
yeah,
like, no, thank you.
yeah. Um, yeah. So everyone who is watching, thank you for joining us. If you're new to Ride the Stream, Michelle and I will be continuing this journey through Lost season one and beyond. There are 6 seasons total. And we'll throw in other TVs and movies that are available on different streaming services. Um, Today's episode is episode 19, Deus Ex Machina, which aired March 30th, 2005. So this episode focuses on Locke with the flashbacks. Um, and I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Oh yeah, got
All right.
got my wetsuit on. I'm ready.
All right, so we will run through the synopsis and we have a general discussion along with our 2 or 3 questions that we add at the end. So let me get to my lovely synopsis. Episode 19 is all about Locke, his newly formed difficulty with walking, his past with his estranged parents, and his belief that he and Boone are there for a reason and that they're meant to be there. And more so open the hatch. Oh, and Sawyer's also having severe headaches, and he and Jack kind of play the cat and mouse game where will Sawyer be a patient? Will Jack be the doctor? So they have a little bit of back and forth. Um, but going back to Locke, Boone asks about John's life story. But Locke tells him it's pretty boring. And in this episode's flashbacks, we see John working in a large toy store when a woman seems to be watching him. When he appears before her in the parking lot after getting hit by a car, she tells him that she's his mother. And with that mighty surprise, Locke asks about his father, to which she replies that he was immaculately conceived. Ultimately, Locke uses a private investigator to determine who his father is and goes to see him. One Mr. Anthony Cooper seems to be a very well off individual with a very direct and crass approach to communicating, but offers John to go hunting with him. The relationship seems to blossom as they spend more time together until one visit, John arrives early, even though he was told what time to be there, and sees his dad on a dialysis machine. He needs a new kidney, but he tells Locke to not let it ruin their day. They can still go hunting and have a wonderful lunch. But before you know it, they're in adjacent hospital beds as Locke is preparing to give him one of his kidneys. One little problem. He wakes up and discovers his father has left immediately after the surgery. Uh, Dad, where'd you go? Locke goes to the closed gate and asks the guard he's befriended to let him in. But the guard woefully refuses his request since he's been instructed not to let him in. It would seem Locke has been hosed by someone who all he wanted was a loving relationship. Back on the island, Locke's failed attempts to open the hatch are amplified by the fact that he's beginning to lose sensation in both legs. He tells Boone that he was in a wheelchair before the plane crash, but the island gave him his legs back, although now the island is trying to take it back and he doesn't know why. He also tells Boone about a dream he had where he saw a plane in the air and that they're supposed to find it and that it will lead to something tangible, either towards opening the hatch or even rescue, possibly. One little side note, in Locke's dream, he also sees a bloody Boone standing in a trance like state, but don't worry, he doesn't mention that part. On their trek and search for the plane, Locke's legs finally give out of him and he's unable to go any further. Amazingly enough, when he falls and looks up, he discovers the plane that he was meant to find high up in the canopy. Because he is unable to walk, he tells Boone he's going to have to go and climb up there, the great distance up into the canopy to reach the plane. Boone reaches the plane and doesn't discover anything but some drug smuggling statues and a radio. And the radio works, and he's able to talk to someone on the other end. But Locke shouts up to Boone to get out of the plane as it begins to shift with his weight and movement inside of the plane. Boone is too distracted by discovering others on the radio, and the plane eventually falls nose first to the ground before flipping upside down. Boone is bloodied, and Locke is somehow able to reach Boone, pick him up, and carry him back to the caves. He tells Jack about Boone falling off a cliff, but leaves before Jack can get any more answers from him. We end the show with Locke covered in Boone's blood and banging on the window of the hatch. He's screaming, asking why these things are happening, and as if getting an answer to his question, a light turns on inside of the hatch. And that's an episode. So this is a very revealing episode on many levels with Locke's backstory, you know, Boone and Locke both sharing, intimate details about their past. Um, you know, Jack giving it to Sawyer a little bit with the doctor's exam. Um,
Lots of
but
personal
as
questions.
yeah, so as our resident Lost newbie, uh, what were your impressions of this episode after watching it?
Yeah, a couple, oh boy, a few things. One, um, I always thought that the the way Locke got introduced to his mom, I thought felt kind of forced. So I was always suspect and kind of like on my guard, so to speak, with regards to that part of the storyline, which was all told in flashback. It just felt a little bit contrived. And then, of course, when um, Locke arrives supposedly on time, but early, um, to the fact that his dad is on kidney dialysis and needs a kidney um, transplant, and he's waiting. And even though he's very wealthy, wealth only goes so far. Um, and he's not been able to get a new kidney. So, because of that, um, he's, you know, commandeered, orchestrated the mother getting in touch with Locke in order to basically have Locke give him a kidney. And I was so angry, honestly, that here is a person who Locke admits he's been, bounced around several years through the foster care system. And all he wants is he doesn't want anything other than some love, that he didn't have growing up and a connection. He wants to connect.
Yep.
And, he hires a private investigator, does learn that indeed the mom is the mom, and the dad, the investigator says, well, should I give this to you, or, do you want it? Because, the father hasn't reached out, just the mom. And he, of course, he wants the folder from the investigator, and then goes and visits the dad. And it seems everything's great, everything's wonderful. And of course, probably for a lot of us, little voices like, something's not right here, something's not right. And it certainly wasn't, because just as you said in the synopsis, Locke offers up a kidney. They're in the hospital, they're holding hands, they're going to come through
Yeah.
the other side. And
Oh,
I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a huge downer afterwards. And I was hoping that he'd be there. And of course, Locke wakes up. And talk about disorienting to um, wake up. The person that you gave the kidney to is already split town. The nurse doesn't even know that the relationship between the two of them. She just thought he was such a good Samaritan to donate a kidney to somebody else, when in
yeah.
fact it's actually his dad. So there was just so many things that were wrong. And then of course the father doesn't want anything to do with him after he got what he wanted. And I just was like, oh, that sucks. So, you feel off kiltered because of that. And then the whole Locke and Boone working together. And I have felt that Boone is kind of like a surrogate son, so to speak, because,
Yeah.
we don't really know a whole lot about Boone either. I mean, he does convey the fact that, his mom wasn't around a lot. He had a nanny. He terrorized the nanny. Um, so, they kind of had that kind of father-son relationship that maybe they're both looking for. And then of course Boone gets very hurt at the end. And of course I'm like, I'm not thinking anything beyond the fact, well, beyond the fact that Boone looked a lot like what he looked like in the Vision, which is, you know,
Yeah.
kind of off, makes you wonder, okay, premonition, a foreshadowing that we've had throughout every episode. We get a lot of foreshadowing. Um, and then the fact that um, Locke was yelling for Boone to get out of the plane, get out of the plane, you
Yeah.
know. And I he wouldn't get out of the plane because the radio was working. Um, so I don't know how long the plane was there, probably quite a long time, because there were two bodies found, one a fake priest and then somebody else in the plane. And of course they look mummified, skeletal. Um, so no idea how long they've been there, but the fact that the radio worked just is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because you'd kind of think like, why would the radio work if all those years it's been sitting there dormant? I don't know. I'm not mechanically inclined, so maybe a watcher out there could say yay or not that that's
Yeah.
probable, especially
I didn't even
given.
think about that. That's a great point.
Yeah, yeah. So, put down in the comments if this is a reasonable, logic, because I do sense like there's a lot of odd alternate logic going on here. A lot of foreshadowing. And usually our foreshadowing doesn't pay off in the same episode. It's usually a setup for further down the road. So I was really taken aback how Boone looked in the vision and then how he looked at the end when he was injured from the plane falling off the canopy of trees.
Yeah.
Um, I do wonder why Locke just didn't say, "We found a plane, Boone went up there." Um, because that's not unreasonable for Boone to go up there. And Locke maybe, to hold the fort on the ground. Uh, so I'm a little puzzled by why he didn't tell the truth at the finding the plane
Yeah.
because I don't think that would have been harmful necessarily. Um, so I was kind of left in a quandary, kind of wondering why did he not just give that detail out? Um, but
The only
I
thing I can think of is that maybe he was still trying to protect the hatch being a secret for some reason. But I mean, at this point, it's like, dude, Boone's hurt. Like,
yeah, better to give the information because I mean I think eventually there will be others that may find the plane and
yeah,
be like, oh, hey, there's newer blood in here.
yeah.
So,
Um, and I think it's interesting with this episode. It's probably the first episode where you were talking about how you had the bad vibe with the mother and father, and I feel like knowing something that the character didn't know and having that sense of like, uh-oh. Like
mhm,
I don't know if I recall feeling that in any other episode up to this point where it's like, hey, they are kind of it's almost not to say obvious, but there's yeah, like you mentioned, there's just something not right there.
yeah,
Um, which is an interesting choice because what we know of Locke, he's so in tune with things where it seems like he knows what's going on, he knows the lay of the land, and but you see him get duped, and it's in such a massive way. Like an organ is removed from his body. Like, um, so it's really weird that, Locke is such a uh, above board character where he just seems like he's, one of the top tier characters and he can do no wrong. And then in this episode, you see him like super frustrated and angry and at not being able to get the hatch open. You see him like concerned about his legs, like not having feeling. And so you just get this really different vantage point of Locke
yeah,
instead of what we were talking offline, where everyone else's opinion of him is like, oh, you didn't work in a box company. What are you talking about? Like, now we're seeing kind of that.
yeah. The the toy store that he's working in is looks a lot like Toys R Us, and he's the episode opens up with him, playing with the mouse trap game and the little boy trying to like, oh, what's this board game? And he shows him how it works. So he has some street smarts there because he's able to make the trap. I've never played the game, so I don't know how hard it is to build the trap on the game board. But um yeah, I don't want to say that Locke is infallible, but we definitely see the the flip side to Locke and for him to become rather illogical and not, like you said, not in control, which for Locke being like kind of our rock in the stormy seas, and then suddenly he's not. We see weaknesses, him not being in control, um, him having issues with anger, getting the better of him, um, and things not going right because up to this point, like the trebuchet, you'd think that it would work based on his calculations, everything went right, except it didn't break the glass.
Yeah.
Um, which is like kind of the start of like luck is no longer on your side, which I think kind of continues from the prior episode where Hurley had lucky numbers, but he's also cursed. And I feel like we're seeing kind of that logic and that thread again in this episode
Yeah.
where the island can give, but it can also take away very easily. And so the fact that he's trying to get in to that hatch, we see more of it. It looks like a big, you know, upper end of something that's buried. And we
Yeah.
thinking, okay, it's a hatch, and then you're going to take stairs down or something. So, who knows what's underground? Very curious about that. Um, but yeah, it just feels like it continues from the prior one, and that it was weird about his legs giving giving way. And I think it was important because I don't know, it's almost like the island's like, well, okay, so this is really screwy, but it's almost like Destiny or Final Destination, where, Destiny gets cheated. So now the, and let's, substitute in the island's getting cheated. So now island, it says, okay, it's your time. Or, well, we gave you that, but we're going to take it back away, type of thing. But, it was temporary because he obviously got use of his legs back. Um, but I'm left wondering, like, what did he do? And, he even screams, what did he do? You know, that they take it away from him. Um, and I'm wondering if he's been doing everything that the island's happy with him doing. What did he do that pissed off the island? I don't feel like that's really alluded to because, if he wasn't meant to break the hatch, why did the hatch light come on when he's banging on it? It's
I
just very interesting.
I love that you brought this up because my third question is almost exactly what you just talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and read it
Okay.
because I love that you are thinking this way. Just because that's I think how my brain works. So my so everyone new to the show, we do three questions. We talk one, what is your favorite scene or standout moment? Two, most interesting character of the episode, and three, we'll do some type of other question focused on the episode. What I do for question three this time, I say Locke references, quote, it was meant to be in this episode, and destiny and how they're meant to be there and discover things is also referenced. Um, he's also referenced the island as special and that it made a whole, while also not knowing why it's trying to take it back. So with Locke being able to walk and carry Boone after seemingly being unable to walk anymore, does that mean the island made him unable to walk so he wouldn't be the one injured from the plane falling from the canopy? And that's the question. And
Mm-hmm.
you touched on like the island kind of, because really the island is a character on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so do you think the island took away his ability to walk so he wouldn't be the one to climb up and get injured ultimately?
Yeah, I do actually.
I think it's such a cool idea. Like,
It
there's so
is.
much going on in this show with the characters themselves that sometimes we forget that the island has these really mysterious elements, from the unknown monster, which you referenced, I believe, kaiju in our very first episode, like the unknown monster and the others, these, Ethan and whoever else could be on the island. And
Yeah.
just all of these different things that have Locke walking is huge. Um,
And
so
no
the
real
idea,
explanation either.
yeah,
Medically, he should not be able to. But there's been other stories out there where, oh, okay, Star Trek. I think the pilot, the original episode where it's Pike, where he, you know, there's a trial there. I think I think Spock's on trial or something in that very early one. And he gets taken back. He's like totally encased in some sort of wheelchair thing. He's burned and all that type of stuff. I don't can't remember the specifics of why he's basically in an iron lung that you can move around. But when he goes back to that planet, he's got this it that has this kind of illusion magical properties that allow him to appear as a young Pike again. So why shouldn't there be the ability for him to walk if so choosing? Um, and I do feel that the islands almost like a god, so to speak, and making the decisions of, how fate is working out and why things are happening the way they are. So I do think that there's like some greater plan, and this is a microcosm of that time and space. Because I don't want to say, well, it's contemporary because it's not necessarily. We don't know. Phones don't work. Hurley's little Sony Walkman D2 or whatever it was, finally crapped out because the batteries are dead. So we can't really say. We've seen no planes, so we really don't know what's going on with the island. And it's very appropriate that you say that the island is a character as well and does have a driving force on the other characters on the island. We don't, you know, that crash was so substantial that all these people could be dead, but somehow they're alive.
yeah,
Just like Locke is able to walk again, you
yeah,
know. So there is an alternateness about the island. It is magical, it is mysterious, and there's not necessarily logic, that can be easily discernible. Um, and I think that's what makes, again, the series interesting is that there are all these things that are going on, and it always leaving you not on, you know, good solid ground because you get this stuff come into play. You get some of these answers, and then, like you say, by the end of the episode, we have more questions. Like,
yeah,
who's home in the hatch? Is that hatch going to open? We don't know. What's going to happen to Boone? Boone seemed to get pretty hurt there. Did he get a message out? Was that transmission actually received? Are they going to be able to ping and know, or is because of the transmission by Danielle still blocking anything else?
right.
What's actually going out into the world, or was it Boone really hoping that he made contact and maybe there really wasn't contact? That was the island manipulating that radio. Who knows?
Yeah. And the fact that just I'll touch on Boone's ability to climb up the canopy, like I, like oh sure, I'll go do it. And he slips at one point, but um I think it kind of touches on sadly like he- this he's always wanted to be at least earlier on we've talked about him like wanting to be this leadership role and
Mm-hmm.
he's always been willing to help in you know Locke says you're gonna have to go up there because I can't um and Boone recognizes that and he takes it on. I do think the relationship between Locke and Boone um, is almost cemented in this episode where it's unbreakable just because of what they share.
Hmm.
Um, because Boone, even in this episode, it's like, what are you crazy? You can't walk. I have to take you back
Yeah.
to Jack to get seen. Um, and when he opens up about him being in a wheelchair, um, and I think he opens up about this after the dream he had, um, where in the dream, Boone talks about Teresa falls up the stairs, Teresa falls down the stairs. Um, and he's like, how do you know that? And Locke's just like, that's what you were saying in my dream. And and there's a moment when they get to the plane, and obviously Boone tells Locke that his nanny was named Teresa and she fell down the steps and broke her neck.
Yeah.
And immediately after that, Locke starts laughing. And Boone gets so pissed. But he's like, no, no, he's pointing because they he falls right where they he needs to fall to see the plane. And
Hmm.
I think earlier he fell to where when he got back up, he saw the rosary, which up was one of the dead bodies. So it's almost like he's
Yep.
falling where he needs to. Um, but in that moment where he's laughing and he points up and Boone realizes there's the plane that you saw in your dream. And there's almost like this look of, holy crap, Locke is not crazy. Like
Yeah.
he knows what he's talking about. He had this dream that's true. So in that, it's a brief moment, but it's just like it almost made me feel like that, like solidified, like he's not just this weird, crazy dude. He's just someone that believes in something that they're meant to be there. And I think at that point, Boone believes Locke that they're
Hmm.
meant to be there. They're meant to find the plane. Um, and so yeah,
He drank the Kool-Aid.
yeah. Um,
He
and
comes to believe too. There's just too many things that line up that Boone can't ignore it any longer.
yeah. Um, so there are a lot of scenes in this episode that are very, I think, powerful.
Mhm.
Um, whether it's the emotional connection between Locke and Boone, Locke revealing, being revealed by his mother that it was all a scam, and um, I mean, even the back and forth between Sawyer and Jack is great. Um, Kate again continues to be like this, keeping everyone together, and she's like, Sawyer, come on, get off your ass, go see Jack. Quit being stubborn.
Mhm.
Um, you know, she didn't have to do that. Again, I think it highlights who she is. Um, so for our first question, going back to the first of three, is there a, I think it's this, yeah, is there a scene or moment or a few interactions that really stood out to you in this episode as far as being your favorite?
Yeah, a couple of them. I'll give my honorable mention has to go to Sawyer trying on glasses. And
Yes.
just, how Jack was really kind of teasing him. And I think it was Hurley comes by, just looking at the glasses and, trying to, figure out what glasses are going to work for him. And the follow-up scenes where Jack, Kate, and Saeed were all involved with helping out Sawyer with his severe headaches. Come to find out he needed glasses because he'd been reading more. And his eyes had fatigue. And so here's Jack with his little case with, I don't know, like 30 different pairs of glasses, and they test out to see which glasses he needs. And then Saeed is, burning the glasses, apart so that way that way he can fuse the right two pairs of glasses. So that way Sawyer can have a pair of glasses. And of course, it's so funny because one side are the kind of masculine black frame, sort of like yours, and the left side is this more kind of cat deal going on with a
Yeah.
little bit of little rhinestones there. And of course, Hurley comes by and says, who flattened Harry Potter or something. It was very funny. But you know, again, as usual, part of the format of the show is that you have very, heavy material to go through, and then you've always got something lighthearted. And even Kate says after Sawyer gets, pretty pissed by all the personal questions, and Kate says, "Okay, I know he deserved it, but really, you went that far, with the questions." And
Yeah.
and at one point, Jack even, when Kate first approaches him about helping Sawyer, and Jack says, "Oh, yeah, he's not going to accept my help, and I'm probably going to get a new nickname." You know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, self-aware.
I
Um,
love that he recognizes that Sawyer gives everyone a nickname and that they put that out there. I
mhm.
forgot about that. So I love that other people on the island are aware of Sawyer's tendencies.
Yeah, I love it. It's not past anybody. But yeah, so I like that story thread because that was lighthearted. Um, and Sawyer now has an interesting pair of glasses to wear when he's reading. So he won't get really bad headaches anymore. But my standout scene would have to be Locke waking up in the hospital room alone and realizing um, that he is alone. His dad left him. He's gone into private care. Just completely shuts the door in a very physical, emotional, and mental way, all in that moment. And I felt that scene was just very, very powerful, and said so much on so many different levels. So that was my standout.
It's it's so heartbreaking.
Hmm.
Um, like I know you talked about having that vibe of something not right, but could never dream that that's where it was going to go. Like,
Yeah,
and the trauma of having to deal with that and trying to deal with it immediately and getting shut out. And his mom, when she's there in the hospital, to kind of tell him it was his father's idea. You had to be willing to give it up on it had to be your idea. She's so nonchalant about it. Like,
it
I
really
needed
is.
money. And he's always been good like that, giving me money. And I was "W- like, no concern from either of them for Locke's welfare. And that is so gutting. Um, it's almost like a makes him like just a tragic figure. So I can't imagine a world where that kind of thing happens. Um, and he gets it from both parents. And
Yeah. He's just a
um,
commodity. You know,
oh yeah,
he's an ends to a means for the mother to get money, and the father to get an organ, for goodness sakes,
yeah,
with no regards to Locke and his feelings or maybe his health or anything else like that. It's
yeah.
tragic.
Because people react differently after they do transplants. Like whether they're receiving or giving, like their body might react in a way that's not
Yeah.
good. Like, um, yeah, that is definitely. I didn't make a pick yet. Surprise, surprise.
Do you have your
It's
list of
definitely one of
five?
them. I have I have three.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
You're doing better.
that's one of them. They all revolve around Locke. That's one of them. Um, when Locke tells Boone about being in the wheelchair,
Hmm.
and then when Boone tells Locke about Teresa and that when she died, like he was 6.
Yeah.
Um, and then that realization of like, oh my gosh, there's the plane, and I I hate how sad that scene is, but I think you're right. I think that scene, and it's kind of like a sequence with the hospital,
Hmm.
then with him driving in the car. Because while he's in the hospital bed and his mother's talking to him, the pain on his face, not from the surgery, but from just the emotional turmoil, like he's like I even think I wrote down um what he said specifically. Like I know, and also before that, his dad, while they're side by side in the beds, he says, "I'm so thankful for you, John." And John says, "This was meant to be." And then the last thing that his dad says is, "See you on the other side, son." So knowing that leading up to him finding out where she says, um, so what she says was, it was his idea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, John. I needed some money. He's always been good that way. Uh, and John says, you told me I didn't have a father. And she says, well, he said that was the only way you would give it to him. It had to be your idea. And he told me where to find you. And he asked me to go see you. And he's just like so distraught. And he's like, this can't be happening. He wouldn't do this to me. He rips out the IV.
Yeah.
And seeing that, and then after he gets, and he even befriends the guard, and they are like on good terms. And you can tell the guard is like, you know, upset that he has to turn Locke away.
Yeah.
But he does. He turns him away, and Locke is smashing the roof of his car as he's driving away and screaming. And it's it's so palpable that moment. Like you can feel his anger and his heartbreaking. And I just I don't like that. That's the favorite or most interesting scene, but I think it really kind of like opens the viewer's eyes to like, man, he's gotten if you want to describe someone as being screwed or screwed over, like it's hard to top that. Um, and I just can't imagine. Well, I don't have to imagine. Terry O'Quinn's performance is so good. Like, and I think that's why it's so heart-wrenching because you see how painful it is for him. Um, so it's yeah, that's just devastating. Um,
I would
now
add too that with that scene, and then you reevaluate his behaviors and his interactions with like Boone in this episode, with Claire making, the little rocking cradle. Um, his interaction with Charlie and everyone else, and the fact that to be just a money cow and a commodity by his parents, and yet somehow, you know, he is a very intelligent, a very giving person. you're kind of like, how did he become that way? Because he sure didn't have what we would think is a traditional upbringing where he'd have all those values. Um, and that in spite of all that, he's he's a good person,
Yeah.
and he's got good intentions to others. He's got tough love when he feels that it's warranted, but it's balanced with the soft glove approach when it's necessary.
Yeah.
And I think him having that balance is something that I think we all try to strive for in our lives and how we deal with ourselves and with others. So he's just an amazing character. Yes, and I would totally agree that Terry O'Quinn's performance as Locke is just incredible. I can't imagine somebody else being Locke, honestly.
Right. Absolutely. And that imbalance that we see in this episode with Locke is jarring because
Mhm.
what we've seen so far is, he's able to like take a step back, provide logical thought. He's open to believing in things, even if we can't see them. Um, so he's almost like who you want to be around.
Mhm.
And all these moments with Claire and Boone and Charlie, it's almost like he's giving them what he's always wanted. Um, and I love that he's able to do that. I know we've talked a few times about his tactics,
Oh yeah.
so we don't have to touch up on that really tough love sometimes, but um, deep down, he seems like a good soul, and he's it's almost like he got so tired of waiting for others to love him that he's just trying to like take care of other people and love them. Um, and that's almost like the role he's had on the island.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you have a favorite character in this episode?
Should we
Is
say
it,
it together?
I mean, we can.
Definitely,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. Um, I did begrudgingly add his mother and father to the list as far as interesting characters,
Hmm.
just because of how vile his father is, how again nonchalant his mom is about the whole scam.
Hmm.
As if it's no big deal, he just wanted me. It's like, dude just took an organ from him, and you're acting like he just skipped out on a coffee tab. Like,
Yeah.
so so I did list those. I think I even mention who else did I mention? But I mean, it is definitely I agree, Locke.
Hmm.
Um, I think I thought about Kate briefly, even though she's not in the episode much. Just kind of how she is, trying to make sure that hey, Jack and Sawyer can coexist. They don't have to be always at each other's throats. They can, Jack needles it to Sawyer, even though he doesn't have to. But that's
I like at the end when Sawyer now has his glasses and Jack, you know, I don't remember a specific line that he says, but as he, walks away, he gives Sawyer a pat on the back, like, I gotcha. It
yeah,
was nice. It was a friendly thing. Um, we see Michael and June working together on the raft that's coming along. And the fact that they still are, two different languages, but somehow they're communicating. Um,
that was one of the lighthearted scenes too, because Jack
yeah.
asks Michael, "Hell, you picking up some Korea?" And he's like, "I'm pretty sure I know how to say faster and idiot."
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
Uh,
that. And then of course, Sawyer asking Son about the leaves, because I think he was trying to like I think probably like chew on leaves as a way to help alleviate the headaches, but it wasn't happening. So
yeah,
Kate didn't know. Sun actually knows, conveys that to her, and that sets off that. Um, so it was nice that there was some cohesiveness, some humor in there, to balance out all of the very somber and tragic themes that we had with Locke, both with Boone, because what's going to happen with Boone, because the plane fell and tipped over, and he was right in the middle of the pilot chairs, so to speak. So, how much damage has been done to him as a
yeah.
result. Um, and of course, him verbalizing his torment of the nanny makes me think, well, did karma just come around and bite you in the ass big time?
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Because,
Yeah,
she fell down the stairs, broke her neck. Um, so I'm almost like, yeah, did the island kind of do you in, after you've realized and actually basically confess to what you did, you know,
yeah.
tormenting her day in, day out.
Nonstop calling her to come up for stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that. I do want to give, like you mentioned, Jack patting Sawyer on the shoulder. I want to give kudos to Sawyer
Hmm.
when he's talking to Son. He's clearly frustrated that the leaves didn't work, but he does tell Son, "Nice garden." Like he didn't have to say
Yeah.
that. He was obviously frustrated when he said it, but he did say it, I think, as a way to say thank you for trying to help. So I thought that was small moment, but it was nice. I think Sawyer needs a little help being kind. So I think every little bit kind of helps.
Soften the edges.
Yeah. So that was good. Was there anything else talking about since Locke is our favorite character? Was there any other moments that you can think of worth that we haven't touched on in the episode that um
Just very early on, after the first flashback, Locke and Boone are still talking about how to get the hatch open. And I did like that Boone actually verbalizes Boone's understanding or lack of understanding and want to try to understand where Locke is from because, he states that Locke can quote Nietzsche and then complete some sort of engineering feat, all in between two breaths, so to speak.
yeah.
And to the point where I think that Boone is very curious about Locke, wants to know about his background, because I think he kind of feels like Locke is a person that he looks up to, and can mentor him, has intelligence, has street smarts, and I think in a way he kind of wanted to be like Locke, who
Yeah.
has a presence. And Boone is trying to find his presence. And it's like you said earlier, he seems to be a follower. And when he didn't bat an eye to go up into the plane, um, because it was his chance to probably prove something to Locke, in his way that, hey, I got this. I can do it. I've carried you, I've dragged you, because I believe in you. And I'll go up in the plane because you're not able to, because we need to check it out, see what's up there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a reason why the island brought them to it. Little did Boone know that it's, to hurt him, but there's reasons, and it's reasons for everything happening. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I think Locke and Boone, maybe outside of Michael and Walt. I feel like maybe Locke and Boone have spent more time together than any other duo. Um,
Two
Possibly because
weeks.
they spent so much time like searching for Claire,
Hmm.
um, with the hatch, being gone from morning till night, hunting together. Um, so it does seem like Boone asking to know more about Locke is I think he genuinely cares about Locke.
Hmm.
Um, and I think Locke is a genuinely caring person, even if you don't see it, because he has a very kind of uh,
Hmm.
statuesque face, where what you see isn't necessarily what you're getting. Because if you were to
Yeah.
look at Locke, bump into him in the forest, you might think, oh, um,
Hmm.
person maybe looks grumpy, or is he someone to be trusted? But he's uh, such a great character. I I just and seeing him kind of infallible in this episode with all the things that have happened to him and him losing his cool and being frustrated, and but at the end of the day, Boone's hurt and he finds a way to like put him on his shoulders and carry him who knows how far
Yeah.
they are from the caves. Um yeah, I can't
And
imagine.
unfortunately, we don't know what his condition was, and sadly, the way Locke's carrying him, who knows how much more damage was done because they're on the island. Um, you know, would have been better to leave him there, go back, get people, take a stretcher out. Um,
Right.
yeah, we don't know.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because they always say when someone's badly hurt, you got to leave them and assess
Yeah,
before moving. So no, that's a great point. I just remember when they took the shirt off and you got a quick view of like, eh, not like it just did not look natural.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I'm excited because we're approaching uh the episode that you've watched up to is 21,
Yeah, I think
which is
through
when we started.
21. And then
So we're
22
getting
and
close.
23 will be brand new for me. Oh boy.
Um,
Oh boy.
yeah. So are there any other highlights from this episode that we haven't touched on yet?
I think that was pretty much it. I did like, the fact that Boone's interest, genuine interest in Locke. I think we talked offline, and I'm not sure that we touched on it as much. But I'll repeat it on camera. The fact that his mom said that he was very, very special. And that's not the first time that we've heard that about one of the casts on Lost. We've also heard that about Walt. Walt being very special, that things
Yeah.
happen around him. And it's alluded that when he wants attention, certain bad things can happen around him. Um, so it's interesting that we get kind of that idea conveyed in another character. We could even say that about Hurley is kind of unique and special as well. First, winning the lottery, but then, kind of being blessed and cursed at the same time
Yeah.
puts him in a special kind of position. And I do wonder when we'll kind of get that with the other characters because again, thinking that all these people are here for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious about as we get more stories and more of their story unfolds in more flashbacks of each character, what we're going to find out. So,
Yeah, and that our our favorite scene with the hospital scene and then him in the car, that tails end up into him smashing on the hatch. And he says a couple sentences or one sentence there.
mhm,
Um, it's almost like he's talking to the island. He says, quote, I've done everything you wanted me to do. So why did you do this? Why? Um, so our discussion of the island as a character is kind of, I mean, that's kind of what Locke believes. He believes
mhm,
the island is its own special entity, um, to where, like you mentioned before, island gives, island take away, and he's
mhm.
so distraught at that moment. Um, so I can't remember, but I have to imagine the next episode picks up like almost immediately where it's left off here. It's like basically this is like a to be continued, I'd have to imagine.
It
Um,
it is because I do remember that as I was taking my notes, it popped into the next episode, and I will say it begins right with, I believe, Jack working on Boone. I think that's the opening scene.
well, I think that's all the notes I have. I will remind people, if you're watching, thank you. If you do leave a comment, please do tell us your favorite scene, your favorite character. Is the island, did it make Jack unable to, or Locke unable to walk, so Boone would be the one to get hurt? And if you leave a comment, just please add a spoiler if any comment is referencing a future episode beyond this one, just so anyone who hasn't watched Beyond won't be spoiled. Um, yeah, I'm already ready for the next episode.
And of course, the logic about the plane and the radio. Um, it'd be interesting to hear a bit of the logic behind things of being on an island and what's possible. Like I said earlier, I'm not mechanically inclined. I don't know. I would just feel that a plane
I'm not
wouldn't
either.
uh radio wouldn't work. And so if that's the case, that means that the island's working again, in mysterious ways. But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, with that, I think we're gonna call that a wrap for episode 19. Definitely subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment to help our stats, that kind of thing. We publish our Lost episodes every Friday, so make it a Lost Friday for many, many Fridays to come. There's 121 episodes, and we'll be talking about all of them in the next 2.5 years. So
Mhm.
this
All
is a
right.
long journey, but we hope that you're up for it and we'll want to take it with us. Thanks, everyone.